All right. This is after 2 days of non-appearance of this broadcast because of IT issues that we hope we have resolved for the time being. And you've got a kind of additional understanding of the IT factors that were responsible for the obstruction that we encountered in doing the broadcast. So this one is aimed at only one destination, but there will be other destinations that we hope overnight to add to the destinations. But this one will be circulated by us sending to the particular platforms that have been not included. Now, this is the edition, part A of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of Kudilar television channel being broadcast, timed at 23:55 hours GMT, which is 5 minutes to midnight British local time. The main so-called political news, which is what we have been concentrating on for most of the last month or so, the political issues in the UK, within quotation marks, have been concerned with the congenital liar Boris Johnson and the rape accused wrongdoer and a friend of the USA convicted criminal, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, Brenda's favorite son, Andrew Windsor. And there are too many things that we say, world exclusively, diagnostically, originally. There are too many things that are common in the tactics by or on behalf of congenital liar Boris Johnson as well as the rape accused multiple wrongdoer, friend of the convicted criminal, Jeffrey Epstein, that is Andrew Windsor. And we shall be originally publishing and focusing on those particular common factors between the two of them. And it has been reported by obviously it's a kind of in denial Fleet Street tabloid, the Rupert Murdoch scum, that this is the scum that is containing, this is the scum that is based on the 13th of January. And what this one says, the headline, this is the one that we didn't broadcast because we had the last successful transmission or broadcast or streaming was on the 12th of January. So this is 15th of January. So this one, this particular one is dated the 13th of January. Damned old Duke of York. Now the Duke of York is itself unacceptable because the people of the city of York, which has got a lot of connections with the Christian denomination, the Anglican Church, which is numerically the dominant church in the UK. Because the people of York, including one of the local MPs, the York Central, Rachel Mansell, have been demanding that the title of the Duke of York should be removed from Andrew. But it seems that the Fleet Street liars are quite reluctant to listen to them. They're quite happy to have Andrew lose his military and other royal connections. But the Duke and the Prince Andrew is still there, but that should be coming under serious kind of focus. But Rachel Maskell and a local Lib Dem councillor, I think, are among the locally, that is in York, locally named, quote, politicians or political kind of persons or names that have surfaced so far as being representative of the strong demand for the Duke of York to be dropped, taken away from Andrew. How long Brenda does that, or how long it takes them to get rid of the Duke of York, remains to be seen, of course. Now, one of the many areas of common kind of tactical corruption and criminality by Boris Johnson and Andrew Windsor is that both of them, if you look at the last 1 month, let's say, not only 1 month, but you could go back years, but let's say in the last 1 month, a few things have happened, including the fact that the application by Andrew Windsor to have the civil law claim, tort, by Virginia Roberts thrown out under so many stupid, desperately kind of cited kind of excuses. We said consistently, and we're saying now, that neither Boris Johnson nor Andrew Windsor, they are not related politically in terms of the actual political positions. That is to say, the holding of the positions, they're different. Because in the case of the congenital liar Boris Johnson, the kind of foundation, if you like, or the justification or the basis for his being in that post is electoral, which is not monarchical or regal or loyal. And it's not in the gift of the monarch, whoever is in the post of monarch. So it depends on how many people vote for which of the contenders in terms of political parties or political party linked candidates. So this time it is the conservative, so called. Next time it could be the Lib Dems. It's theoretically Lib Dem. It cannot be foreseen that would be Lib Dem. More likely foreseeable is another party, which is kind of the political corpse of the Labour Party that has been politically murdered by Keir Starmer. Despite the fact that these are the differences, the similarities are to do with the personalities of these two individuals. Both Andrew Windsor and Boris Johnson are in denial. And both can be shown to be kind of sexually adulterous and promiscuous to points of complete and absolute kind of disgrace. In the case of Johnson, an issue that hardly appears these days to do with his being responsible for paternal avowed to lose two of her children. That is the knowledge, that is the known, recorded known kind of number of children that she lost because of her relationship with the promiscuous, absolutely uncivilized Boris Johnson. I mean, she is reported to have lost by miscarriage one child. How many miscarriages she had has not been scrutinized, but that is one miscarriage it is supposed that she has had. And the other is, of course, that she was caused to have an abortion. She had to literally murder her fetus. The fetus caused by pregnancy, caused by Boris Johnson. Now, any sensitive, caring human being would have been mortified even by one such loss of a child, one such treatment of a child or a fetus. But not Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson went away and he kept denying that he had anything to do with the children, the babies that Petronella Awad kind of conceived and lost. It was Johnson's persistent, criminal, wanton, cruel, corrupt, irresponsible, negligent denials that outraged Petronella Awad's mom, the Hungarian born widow of Woodrow Awad. And she, Petronella Awad's mom, was the outraged mother who made contacts with the media, relevant media. And once she did that, Boris Johnson was exposed as a criminal, cruel liar. And then he kind of kept denying. I mean, Johnson denied other kind of children were his because he has had any number of adulterous relationships and he had impregnated as yet uncounted numbers of women. When I say as yet, this is 3 minutes past midnight, 4 minutes past midnight, or 0004 hours GMT into Sunday, 16th of January 2022. So Boris Johnson is a habitual, kind of serial liar, denier, and absolutely unworthy of any public position, any public office, because he's unsuitable, he's immoral, he's unethical, he's selfish, he's corrupt, he's dishonest. And so is Andrew Windsor. He has been, according to the reports, kind of servile Fleet Street papers like the Rupert Murdoch dirty digger, Rupert Murdoch scum, and the lying Daily Mail. These are the two titles that news outlets have been the propaganda platforms for the liar Andrew Windsor. And they've been carrying all his excuses at finding an alibi. And these are always, all the so-called alibis are completely bogus, false, untenable, unreasonable, unsustainable, unbelievable, unacceptable. For example, one of the alibis, ludicrous, said that he was not responsible for what Virginia Roberts was alleging because she was now in Australia. She was now a domiciled Australian citizen or domiciled in Australia. That is, her main home is in Australia. This is illogical. This is stupid. It's worse than infantile. The crimes that he committed took place in 2001, years before Virginia Roberts got married to her husband, whose name she now carries, which is Jeffrey. The fact that she lives anywhere doesn't have anything to do with what he did. What he did happened before anything else. And nothing she did since that would change his guilt, his responsibility. The evidence of the fact that he did do. And it goes on. And then he said that the American court doesn't have the, connected with that attempt. The American court, or any American court, no American court had the judicial jurisdiction to hear the claim and have the trial of him again on the claims. I mean, now he's saying again, it's not for the first time, but he said what he seems to be doing is stealing arguments from other cases and using some of the arguments from other cases to implant on him as his defense. For example, this is not an original one at all. False memory. In fact, false memory was alleged against the accusers of the now Supreme Court Judge Kavanaugh. Because Kavanaugh said that his accuser, a distinguished psychologist, professor, but she was not a professor or psychologist when he sexually assaulted her. But he said years later that she suffered from false memory. This is a completely cheap and stupid kind of attempt at alibis. Of course, the reason why he is the Supreme Court judge now is nothing to do with the fact that he lied and he was wrong about the false memory, because it was an abuse of the office by Donald Trump, who gloried in appointing him. And Trump is a very kind of extensively citable model for Boris Johnson, and so on. So Trump and Johnson are two of a kind, and they are now, it is very unlikely that Trump will be allowed legally to seek election to the White House again. And it is very unlikely that Johnson will stay in office for a very long time. And it's very unlikely that Andrew Wilson will kind of be able to claim these stupid alibis for a very long time, for very long from now. Now, the role of the Fleet Street newspapers, the so-called British main newspapers, and the BBC and Sky News and ITV and Channel 4 News, the role of all of them has been absolutely, despite the fact that the ITV released that clip about Allegra Stratton and others being in that quiz. These Fleet Street media, the Fleet Street newspaper, the Fleet Street radio, British radio, British television, have been complicit that are actively engaged with the perpetration of the crimes by Boris Johnson at every stage. Saturday's, is it Saturday's Telegraph that we have actually commented on? It's not Saturday's Telegraph, it was the Daily Telegraph. And I'm calling it Telegraph for a reason. I'll explain that in a minute. This is the Telegraph. This is the edition of the Telegraph. If you look me bending that way, it's because I'm picking up papers because they're on the quite a lot and they can't be put in front of me. So this is the one that is Thursday's Telegraph. This is the Thursday's Telegraph that I have actually commented on before, but this is the one. This is the piece that is making us change the name of the description of it. Juliet Samuel is one of the columnists or contributors of the Telegraph. Now, until now, we have been calling this title, Telegraph, Daily Telegraph, the daily buying and bribing Boris Johnson grab, GRAB for Bertie, because Boris Johnson himself has admitted that his real boss is the Daily Telegraph. That is to say, the people who own the Daily Telegraph at the time. And from 2008, when he first became elected mayor, so-called, in the name of London, Boris Johnson has been up to now, up to very recently, treating the Telegraph, which is why we call them buying and bribing Boris Johnson Group, as his real boss. Now, anyone who knows about the contents of the editorial line of the daily buying Boris Johnson Grab will know that it's a very persistently right-wing outlet. It's a persistently racist, colonialist, imperialist, reactionary, anti the poor, anti society, anti democratic platform. Again, we qualify with the PS what the former editor, one of the founding editors of the quote magazine Private Eye, said in his Spectator column, which he wrote for several years as the Spectator's television critic. The Daily Telegraph newspaper was the most comprehensive British newspaper. And by implication, he meant that it is also the most honest and truthful reporter. The Telegraph is no different from the Times, from the Financial Times, from the Guardian, from any of the titles in Fleet Street, regardless of the ownership, regardless of the kind of individual editors and so on. When it comes to their imperialistic role, their imperialistic agenda, the racist role, the racist agenda, and with a very minor exception in the case of the Guardian, which maybe out of 100, 1% of its allegiances are to genuine democracy, but 99% are very much similar to the allegiances of the other titles in Fleet Street. And most of the papers, like the Daily buying Boris Johnson Group, and the Guardian, which is now 200 years old, the Observer, which is a weekly, but it has been very old, and the Times. These are the papers that have been and are, even to this day, Sunday the 16th of January 2022, racist, imperialistic, colonialistic. And in the case of the Muslims, it is a crusader attitude, crusader agenda that they actually follow. It is not a party political comment we make. We make the factual comment, evidential comment about the role and the bias of these particular publications. And what is happening in the current so-called political turmoil that the congenital liar Boris Johnson is going through, that turmoil is not being truthfully reported by most of Fleet Street, because the isolated, exceptional kind of episodes of lying that are coming out mainly through the Guardian. Not exclusively, but mainly through the Guardian. And the Guardian is followed by the Daily Mirror. And both those titles or groups are doing what they're doing in order to sustain their market, as against the Daily Mail and the Scum. And of course, against the Tory graph or the daily buying Boris Johnson graph, daily bribing Boris Johnson graph. So they are not motivated by ethics, morality, and they're not motivated by dedication to democracy. The Guardian is not dedicated to democracy, nor is the Daily Mirror. And most certainly, nor are the Scum or the Daily Mail or the Beaverbrook Daily Express. So the reason why Boris Johnson has been getting away with his congenital lying for 30 years plus is not because he would have got away if his lying were truthfully reported, consistently reported, and expanded on by the likes of the Guardian, the Mirror. Even if the Tory graph group, that is the daily buying Boris Johnson, bribing Boris Johnson graph, would have shielded him, there has been not enough coverage of the truth about Boris Johnson's lies in the Guardian. So this is 19 minutes past midnight British Standard Time, that is to say 0019 hours GMT, London in the UK, on Sunday, the 16th of January 2022. And we're just checking so this thing how the colonized servile mindset, how does the colonized mindset, maintains the colonizers is evident in Hong Kong. In the Hong Kong English language papers, they still defer to the colonialist regime. So here is the kind of Thursday, the 13th of January 2022, front page of the daily bribing Boris Johnson graph. This is the date we didn't broadcast because of IT issues. So here is the reason why we are now dropping that bribing and buying Boris Johnson graph. And the reason is this: because this columnist, Juliet Samuel, in the Daily Telegraph, is saying what we have been saying for years, but they have been denying for years. This is what the summary, of course, the paraphrase, not exact quotation. They're not plagiarizing our copy, but essentially admitting what we have been saying for decades. So this Juliet Samuel piece starts. So which is it to be? Prime Minister, are you a criminal or an idiot? Now, you can't get that straighter than that. A Daily Telegraph, right on the front page of the Daily Telegraph of the 13th of January 2022, is asking Boris Johnson, is he a criminal or an idiot? Faced with the choice, Boris Johnson made the only choice he could. He played the fool. He said that he was an idiot. What other conclusions can we draw from his explanation of what happened on May 20th, 2020? He was apparently unaware that his entire department was throwing what appears to be an illegal lockdown party. And when he did spy, the kerfuffle in his garden popped out to say hello and then bumbled back inside, nonetheless, none the wiser. If this account is true, which is unlikely, she is promptly saying that he's lying. It only raises questions about his competence to govern. Absolutely right. So this raises the question that we have been addressing from time to time about the fact that it has been said that he can read the original Greek. And we have said that regardless of the particular language, every language has got a particular cultural identity and background and dimensions. But when it comes to communicating, when it comes to universal collection of wisdom to be found in any language, it's not the unique property of a particular language, whether ancient Greek or original Latin or whatever. So if Boris Johnson is a congenital liar, the fact that he can pile up a pack of denials in ancient Greek language will not change the fact of his being a liar. And so that's what is going on. And second thing she says, Juliet Samuel, is that it raises the questions about Boris Johnson's competence to govern. Exactly right, as I said before. Yet there is a cynical rationale behind playing dumb. Johnson's statement to Parliament was not just a public relations move, it was the testimony of a suspect. Wait for it, just carefully listen to this. Johnson's statement to Parliament was the testimony of a suspect trying to make it hard for the police to nail him. So he's not a criminal just on one count. He's a multi-count. He's a criminal on many counts, trying to evade capture by the police. That's what Juliet Samuel is saying in her piece in the Daily Boris Johnson Graph, also known as the Daily Telegraph now. That's Juliet Samuel on the front page of the Daily Boris Johnson Graph. And the picture of Elizabeth Truss seen to the left of Johnson and to the right of this page, that's Truss. That racist liar is being peddled by Fleet Street because they prefer her. The racists in the Cons party and the Fleet Street criminal outlets, they prefer him. Sorry, they prefer Elizabeth Truss to Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak, an Indian, and a close relation. I mean, his father-in-law is a billionaire who set up the Infosec IT conglomerate. And Sunak's wife is a multi-millionaire, Harris. And Sunak is a known, proven sucker of racists in this country. So these are a number of serious kind of evidential accusations against him, on which basis we cannot be expected to, and we are not, in any way his supporters or career. And yet we support his human rights. Can you see the irony of it? We support his human rights because he's being kind of sidelined by a section of the right-wing racist conservative party because of his race and ethnicity. And despite all the evidence of Rishi Sunak being a wrongdoer and a liar, we still support his human rights against these racists. Now here is Andrew Windsor, and the Telegraph is correctly giving the headline. Duke of York to face civil trial over sex abuse claims after failing to get lawsuit thrown out. Well, they correctly insist that accurately according to the records, but we say that in the knowledge that the demand for him to be stripped of the Duke of York title is absolutely growing in York. And when Johnson said that he believed that this was a work event, it was worse than ridiculous. No amount of ability or capacity to read the Greek language, Greek text in the original, could hide his stupidity. Now that's the full picture on 2 pages of the Telegraph of Johnson making a false apology or staging a false apology in the House of Commons. That was on the day before. That is, this is the edition of the paper on the pages 4 and 5 of the Telegraph. And there is a picture. Now this woman, Madeline Grant, I mean, it is unspeakable. She's like another Baroness Moon. She looks like Baroness Moon. And if examined, most of her career would be exposed as that of Baroness Moon. And there is a piece in the same Telegraph by Gordon Rayner. Gordon Rayner is not described as being in any way connected with Angela Rayner, but the name is the same spelling. And the headline to his piece is, Johnson knows Sue Gray could load the gun that triggers end of his premiership. Now what we are doing in this edition of the Kudilar television channel is diagnosing world exclusively diagnosing Fleet Street. And what we can say at this stage of this diagnostic edition is that if the Fleet Street newspapers, like this particular edition of the Sunday edition of the Daily Telegraph, used to be known as daily bribing and buying Boris Johnson graph. This is the time is 0032 hours GMT, which is midnight 32 British Standard Time into Sunday the 16th of January 2022. If the newspaper, the Fleet Street newspapers, did their job and they did tell even a fraction of the truth of the behavior, on the behavior of the particular politicals, then we would not be calling them liars. And by the contents of the daily Boris graph of Thursday, we can say that we are accepting that this is the kind of journalism that they should be doing. That this is the kind of journalism that Bill Deeds, that Richard Ingram's praised, would be kind of proud of and would be implementing. As to how long this particular change of the behavior on the part of the Daily Telegraph lasts is not something that can be said with any certainty that this will be kind of sustainable. So we move to Thursday's Times newspaper. On page 5 is that same photograph of Andrew Windsor, and proprietarily holding his hand around the waist of Virginia Roberts in 2001, while Roberts was aged 17 years old, and Ghislaine Maxwell kind of smiles to the camera in a way fitting or befitting a madam, because she was the trafficker. She was the trafficker of the 17-year-old teenage girl victim. What the Times is saying is similar to what the Telegraph has said about Sue Gray. This one is headed, that's Johnson's future, political future, or Johnson's fate, that is political fate, depends on what Sue Gray does. If the heading is Johnson's fate in Gray's hands, and there is a profile of Sue Gray. And there is another interesting, very telling little item in analysis under analysis in the Times, which says, for Tory MPs, it is all about keeping their seats. Incredible revelation. Of course it is. Which is why when we advise the so-called campaigners against HS2, we tell them to focus all their energies, political energies, to replacing the current sitting MPs in the route, HS2 route, where HS2 is being still proceeded with. Because nothing, as we have said in tweets, nothing focuses the attention of politicians as the prospect of their losing their seats. We've said it many times. And this will remain the truth. And the fact that the MPs are not being caused to panic is down to the failure of the so called anti HS2 campaigners. Now, there is a philosophical paradox, a very complicated enigma that has been going on in the UK for the last many years, if not decades. And the enigma became personalized when Jeremy Corbyn was installed as leader of the Labour Party in the UK. I shall come back to that in a minute. So there is a letter in the Times of Thursday, 13th of January, 2022. And the letter is headed Freedom to Protest. Let's go into some of it. This week and next, the House of Lords is voting on the government's police crimes, sentencing, and courts bill. According to Liberty, the bill will give police the choice on where, when, and how people can protest, create new stop and search powers that will exacerbate discriminatory over policing of communities of color and potentially criminalize the way of life of nomadic gypsy, Roma, and traveler communities. Protest from the suffragettes and Black Lives Matter to the movement for LGBTQ plus rights on the school strike for climate has long been vital to the preservation of democratic society, and for securing our civil liberties. As writers and publishers, we believe the right to protest goes hand in hand with the right to freedom of expression and a free press. If we lose one, we lose them all. These measures form an attack on our fundamental rights and will have the most detrimental impact on marginalized communities, silencing the very voices we believe should be championed. We support those groups and organizations fighting to oppose this bill and urge members of the House of Lords to stand up for democracy by voting against this bill. Now, this list of names is Bernadette Evarister, Robert McFarlane, Armando Iannucci, Alan Hollingworth, Candice Carty Williams, Pat Barker, Jackie Cray, Tracy Chevalier, Mallory Blackman, Sarah Waters, Susie Orbach, plus a further 310 signatories of the signatories at the times.co.uk/letters. Now, first of all, these names are all of them on the names. The bodies may be different, but the names are European. And that is racist. Because obviously 310 other names may include people from Africa and Asia. But as the letter published shows, that is not obvious in that particular publication. So it's a white letter. And all the other letters are again signed by Europeans. I'm just looking at, just in case, except one name which is from Turkey, Bodrum in Turkey, and is written by an Indian. And this says, continuing Daniel Finkelstein's Watergate scenario, where are the Tory equivalents of Senator Barry Goldwater, House Republican leader John Jacob Rhodes, and Senate Republican leader Hugh Scott, who went to see President Nixon to tell him that it was time for him to go? And there is a heading on the appearance on the 12th of January 2022. That was the Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. So that is what is supposed to be referring to. The Times is referring to, supposedly, to that in its heading, editorial comment, headed, "Sorry Sight." And the Times is saying, Boris Johnson's partial and legalistic apology for the Downing Street party may buy him a brief respite, but it fails well short of a credible, sustainable defense. And the Times leader comment ends. So here is the last paragraph of the editorial in the Times. It says, whether this stratagem, that talking about various tactics, will work depends on the stance of others, principally conservative MPs. It also requires the Metropolitan Police to stick to the current refusal to conduct investigations into the public reaction to Mr. Johnson's performance. The signs are not auspicious. Many conservative voters who once enjoyed the sense that they were in on the joke had come to believe that the joke was on them even before these revelations. Tory MPs will have to ask themselves what course will best contain the damage. If Tory MPs conclude that Labour would rather fight a Prime Minister who broke the rules and dissembled, then and only then will Mr. Johnson's position be secure. What a stupid editorial that is. I'm going to see if there is a mentionable cartoon in the Times of Thursday the 13th. And there is this cartoon by Peter Brooks, of course. The scenario, the setting is outside the door of number 10 Downing Street, in the Downing Street itself. And it shows the sign is men at work in Downing Street, but they're all carrying bottles of drink. And the Ian Martin piece in the Times of the 13th of January 2022, Thursday, is headed, Johnson has put the Tories in toxic territory. And it says the Prime Minister is emblematic of the entitled Conservative. The Prime Minister is emblematic of the entitled Conservative cad, and the opposition wouldn't have it any other way. And it says in the first paragraph, Ian Martin says, the Conservative Party has long been vulnerable to the charge from opposition that it is cavalier, out of touch, and primarily interested in procuring itself a good time. Partly this is because its roots are colorful and aristocratic, whereas Samba Leva was born out of the trade union movement and demanding a fair wage for a fair day's work. Consequently, the most astute Tory leaders in the modern mass media era have known that they must at all times be wary of creating too strong an impression of entitlement or hedonism, that either they're entitled or they're completely, absolutely morose, tired of having too much sex. Consequently, the most astute Tory leader in the modern mass media era have known that they must at all times be wary of creating too strong an impression of entitlement or hedonism. Remember the experience of Harold Macmillan. Harold Macmillan, the Conservative Prime Minister, whose regime collapsed, under the weight and pressure of the evidence of too much hedonism going on the part of, at that time, the lead hedonist, John Profumo. The lead hedonist, John Profumo, was, of course, caught having too much hedonism with Christine Keeler. Christine Keeler is the one that he abused and misused and exploited. Not much older than Virginia Roberts, whom Andrew Wilson has exploited and abused. And the portrait, the actual image, the picture of Boris Johnson that has been worked on by the Financial Times is quite telling. Financial Times of Saturday, that is reflected light is causing the difficulty in seeing this. So this is the Financial Times of Saturday, the 15th of January, which is combined with the date of Sunday, the weekend Financial Times, which is 15th and 16th of January 2022. So this is the Saturday edition of the Financial Times, and it says, Partygate should prove fatal for a malevolent cavalier prime minister. Now, we have tweeted before we came on to broadcast this. So we diagnosed this Camilla Cavendish piece. And the Camilla Cavendish piece, as we have pointed out already in our Twitter posts, is typically corrupt and dishonest. Although what she's saying is absolutely accurate, because that is the summary of the evidential behavior by Boris Johnson that is being echoed by other parts of Fleet Street. So cavalier, malevolent, prime minister is not in dispute. What is in dispute is that she is praising the police in one part of the article, which is printed by the Financial Times, which costs £4.20. This issue, daily issue of the Financial Times, and this is costing remember, this is the world exclusive diagnosis of listed by the Kudilar campaign. Now, this is not 420, this is £4.30. It's going up. It's probably £4.30 is the Financial Times in London, as it is in the Channel Islands, and the Republic of Ireland is £4.50 of the European currency. Now, this piece on the Financial Times, the front page of the Financial Times on Saturday, let's say the weekend Financial Times, it says, "Party is over" by Camilla Cavendish. "This Prime Minister has damaged the office," that is, Office of Prime Minister. And there is a Financial Times view on page 12 of the FT, Weekend FT or FT Weekend, which is headed, "The Game is Up." So we shall do a bit of reading on each part of it, each part of this edition, that is. And it's on page 12. "The game is up for Britain's Prime Minister." And this is the one that we shall read this heading, editorial there. Financial Times, and it quotes somebody unknown or unnamed there. "Without fear and without favor." That's a lie. Financial Times is never without fear and without favor. It's completely compromised by favor or favoritism. So that's a lie. So we get hold of this stuff there in the Financial Times, which is, we're doing the world exclusive diagnosis of the main British papers in Fleet Street. And it says, "The game is up for Britain's Prime Minister. Tory MPs should listen to their voters over whether to back Johnson." Now, there is no way the Tory MPs should listen to their constituents or voters. Because there is no need. The pandemic has offered a powerful affirmation of Britain's self-image as a law-abiding nation, confounding the skepticism of some government advisors. UK citizens proved ready to submit to agonizing restrictions on social contact. Elderly relatives died alone in COVID wards. Grandparents waited months to cradle newborn grandchildren. Churches closed. Weddings were postponed. Funerals marked by a scattering of mourners. In one corner of the country, however, the guidelines seemed not to apply. In the walled garden of Downing Street on May 20, 2022, glasses clinked filled from bring your own bottles. Among those present was Britain's Prime Minister. Like no other episode in his tempestuous premiership, Boris Johnson's attendance at a party at the height of lockdown has provoked anger across Parliament and the country. It is welcome that the Prime Minister on Wednesday swapped bluster and bumbling for a semblance of contrition. Yet his apology was flawed and inadequate. Now remember what this Financial Crimes is edited by. The Financial Crimes, and that is why we call it the Crimes, is apparently edited by a woman who was born a Muslim in the Lebanon. Now, whether the Financial Times is edited by somebody else altogether is not clear, but assuming that the policy is the same and that whether it's the weekend edition or the weekday editions, the Financial Crime must be following the same agenda. And here, churches closed. It doesn't say mosques closed. It doesn't say synagogues closed. It doesn't say temples closed. It doesn't say gurdwaras closed. It says churches closed. Like no other episode in his tempestuous premiership, Boris Johnson's attendance at a party at the height of lockdown has provoked anger across Parliament and the country. It is welcome that the Prime Minister on Wednesday swapped bluster and bumbling for a semblance of contrition. Wednesday meaning the Prime Minister's questions. Yet his apology was flawed and inadequate. It strains the credibility of the most die-hard Tory voter for Johnson to claim he believed the event was a work gathering. The Downing Street garden does act as an extension of its cramped and airless offices. This was not, however, a meeting relocated outdoors, but an event to which 100 people were invited. Two-thirds did not attend, some apparently able to discern what the Prime Minister could not. Johnson's statement was still couched, moreover, as an apology for any perception of wrongdoing, not for the wrongdoing itself, perception of wrongdoing. The Prime Minister was afterwards reported to be in denial, telling members of Parliament that sometimes you get the blame for something you don't deserve. If so, this betrays how out of touch he is with the public mood. For a leader with a blameless record, a single lapse of judgment might be excusable. It is clear, though, even before Sue Gray, a senior civil servant, reports on her probe into the issue, that this was part of a pattern of behavior in Johnson's Downing Street. Yesterday brought new revelations of a party in April 2021, though without Johnson in attendance. Johnson appears not to care about the rules he passes, or to care only if caught breaking them. The message sent is that something is only wrong if you cannot get away with it. Voters initially warned, so reading that again, voters initially warmed to Johnson because he embodied the anarchic streak that coexists with British respect for rules and fair play. They have forgiven many lapses. Now his cavalier attitude to institutions, regulations, and the truth has become intolerable. When he felt constitutional conventionals, when he felt constitutional conventions limited his room for maneuver in his battle with the EU over Brexit, Johnson tried to circumvent them, proroguing Parliament and for 5 weeks, until forced to backtrack by the highest court in the land. Wrestling with the European Union again, a year later, he threatened to override parts of the exit deal he had signed. When a Tory colleague was found to have broken lobbying rules, Johnson tried to change the system. The Prime Minister shows no sign of a willingness to step aside, however critical the Grey report may prove. A wounded Johnson could yet stumble on to lead his party into the looming cost of living squeeze and heavy losses in May's local elections. Some in his party are not willing to take that risk and are pressing him to step down now. Others are circling, waiting before the strike. Conservative MPs this weekend should listen hard to their constituents and their conscience. The power to unseat the Prime Minister is in their hands. Should they choose to stick with him, voters may conclude they have shown the same contempt for the public as their leader. So this is the editorial in the Financial Times on page 12. And of course, on page 13 is the piece by Camilla Cavendish. Now, Camilla Cavendish contradicts herself in the piece that is published in her name. Because here she has collected together all the press cuttings and put together her name. So what she has said in the piece that we have been tweeting about before we came to broadcast this edition, we shall see some of her comments that we tweeted, and they're more accessible online because we can then focus on the bit that we have, or bits that we have actually tweeted. This is the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street and of British so-called politics. This is part A of the Kudilar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo editions. And Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's most authentic, the world's most loved, and the most ethical and the most moral Baby Angel Geronimo. He is the witness of the behavior of depraved DEFRA, depraved Boris Johnson, depraved Prime Minister, depraved cabal as fronted by Boris Johnson. Baby Angel Geronimo has been directly targeted by the depraved liars at the depraved DEFRA. Now, this is the part of the comment piece by opinion piece by Camilla Cavendish that we are particularly kind of exercised by. This one says, the mental gymnastics required to keep getting Johnson out of scrapes are debasing for his staff, debasing for his ministers, debasing for his party, that is the Cons party, and now debasing also for the police. And this is the sanctifying bit she says about the police, whose constitutional independence is a cornerstone of our democracy. So, what we have said about Camilla Cavendish in the opinion piece that has been published in her name in the Weekend FT Weekend on the 15th of January and 16th of January 2022. That is so Camilla Cavendish in the Financial Times of 15th stroke 16th of January 2022, the weekend edition, says on the third line of her, or third column of her piece, the mental gymnastics required to keep getting Johnson out of scrapes are divisive. For his staff, his ministers, his party, and now the police, whose constitutional independence is a cornerstone of our democracy. Now, this woman is in denial. She's in denial of not the completely unrecognizable behavior, image, organization, and role being played by the Metropolitan Police, given the mounting evidence that there are more complaints against it than there are any justifiable, demonstrable, credible evidence supporting the thesis that it is working. There are, of course, ongoing issues about Sarah Everard and other victims of Metropolitan Police failures. And there is ongoing demand, especially represented by the people and the readers and the members of the public who align themselves with the Daily Mail, that the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, is a surplus to requirements and should be replaced without any delay. And there are sufficient numbers of people in London that Sadiq Khan, the so-called elected mayor at the expense of London, should go. And that Priti Patel, who is in the international jargon, the interior minister, that is to say Home Office, internal affairs minister in the UK, must go. Priti Patel is a surplus to requirement, has been surplus to requirement right from the beginning, as has been in the context of the police and the wide-ranging areas of responsibility owed to the public, owed to society by the police. Because Sadiq Khan, as the incumbent in the post of mayor at the expense of London, is also the kind of chair of the Metropolitan Police Service, not the police force, but police service. Now, if you look at the records, if you look at the published records or accessible records on the role of the Metropolitan Police Service, you cannot find any record that the Metropolitan Police Service has been led to deliver democratic service of policing or democratic policing to London. And it predates the time of Boris Johnson as the mayor at the expense of London. It goes back to the time when Ken Lying Still Livingstone was still in post, and especially the role that Ken Lying Still Livingstone played about the fascistic behavior on many occasions by the Metropolitan Police. And at no time had Ken Lying Still Livingstone come across. Ken Lying Still Livingstone had never come across as being critical of any of the failures by the London Metropolitan Police. Now, as the incumbent in the post of mayor, Ken Lying Still Livingstone, followed by Boris Johnson, followed by Sadiq Khan, who is now incumbent and is now in his so-called second term. None of them has actually engaged in informing the public of what the London Metropolitan Police was doing and what was the level of accountability to the Londoners within the frame of democracy by the police in terms of meeting the various requirements to serve the needs of the people of London. Livingstone didn't do it, Johnson didn't do it, and Khan hasn't done it. And the fact that when Sarah Everard was murdered, well, Sarah Everard hasn't been just murdered. She was kidnapped and she was raped. Nobody knows how many times she was raped while she was in the position of being kidnapped, captured by her murderer, and then before she was murdered and mutilated. These are details, these are evidential details that cannot be described adequately for their distressing impact on all people, and especially those who love her. And then the people, the women mainly, the women of London who wanted to stage a symbolic protest against the behavior of the police and against the murder of Sarah Everard, were treated as if many of them were criminals themselves. So when Camilla Cavendish says that the police deserve to be constitutionally independent, because the police being constitutionally independent is a cornerstone of our democracy. Does she have any understanding of the impact of that kind of completely plastic statement that it must have on, for example, those women, especially the likes of Patsy Stevenson, who were treated as criminals and were targeted for later criminality by many police persons? Where in the constitutional independence of the police that Camilla Cavendish brags about. Where do they fall? Those kinds of criminality by the police. So Camilla Cavendish says that Partygate should prove fatal for a malevolent cavalier prime minister. What about the malevolence? Multiple, thousands, hundreds, thousands, millions of malevolent conduct and behavior that take place across London and are aided and abetted or are tolerated by the police. Who is going to account for that kind of role by the police? And how that kind of role can be called parts of the constitutional independence of our democracy. Who is holding who in account? If the person who is in post as prime minister is a malevolent cavalier prime minister, then where is this country? Surely it must be in the dark, in the darkness of evil and evil doing darkness. There is no rule. Well, there is rule, but there is no rule for holding the malevolent cavalier prime minister account. There is depravity here, depravity there. There is no witness, and there is no adjudicator, ethical, moral adjudicator to hold to account the malevolent, the cavalier, wrongdoing prime minister, congenital liar Boris Johnson. And there is no policing. Because although Camilla Cavendish does refer to police in a contradictory way, for example, here she says the exact opposite of what she meant, what she says about the constitutional independence. In the first column, she says, at the end of the first column, Camilla Cavendish says, the rules are enforced by police who, in a few cases, seem to take excessive pleasure in menacing the public. So it's not just in the kidnapping and in the raping and the brutally oppressive murder of Sarah Everard. But in a number of cases, according to her own confession, Camilla Cavendish, the rules are enforced by police who, in a few cases, seem to take excessive pleasure in menacing the public. What she's saying, in effect, is that in those some cases, the police behaved with sadistic brutality and recklessness and cruelty to the targeted victims, the few cases. So it's not just a one-off. The police are breaking what she gives them the right and the entitlement as the constitutionally independent part of our or cornerstone of our democracy. I mean, where is that sanctified kind of stage where this sanctified role that she or status Camilla Cavendish attaches to the police is found in its excellent moral and ethical form? Because if she admits that the police took particular pleasure in menacing the public, then she obviously hasn't come across any case of the police in the main adhering to the very democratic kind of independence that she happily gives them, allows them, confers on them, lets them have. And again, she is putting another reference to the police. The police are key to what happens next. How is the police or are the police key to what happens next? I'll come to answering that one. Now, these are the three places where she mentions the police. One is at end of paragraph, column 1, which says the rules are enforced by police, who in a few cases seem to take excessive pleasure in menacing the public. And then at the start of the second paragraph in column 2, she says, the police are a key to what happens next. One of the things which has been bothering me, that is Kamala Cavendish, about the Downing Street parties, is why officers who must have witnessed the parties did nothing. That is the officers, meaning police. Why does she think that this is a mystery? We have been saying right from the beginning that police or policing in the UK has been abolished. Now, here are 4 references that I have cited so far from the, well, there are 5 references. Let me just count them. One is that the rules are enforced by police, who in a few cases seem to take excessive pleasure in menacing the public. Okay? And then the second time she mentions this after that. Okay, there are several mentions in the paragraph that follows, or the later parts of the paragraph, about the Derbyshire police. Derbyshire police, that March, that is 2020, released a video of 2 people walking their dog in the vast open spaces of the Peak District. And what Camilla Cavendish is saying, by referring to the fact that the Derbyshire police had released a video of 2 people walking their dog in the vast open spaces of the Peak District, and the police warning that this was not essential travel. Police were saying that the people traveling in the walking their dog in the vast open spaces did not constitute lawful behavior. And then on the 20th of May, the Metropolitan Police, the London Police, warned people not to gather in groups to enjoy the hottest day of the year. So she has mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there is a 7th one in the in the sentence that she says, the Metropolitan Police has so far refused to investigate, but are now considering doing so. This is the one about the Downing Street parties. And all 7 of Camilla Cavendish's references to the police are completely contradictory, because the police actually have not been behaving in accordance with the assumption of policing in this country. Remember what we say about the kind of insulting myth that surrounds Keir Starmer's PR image, which is that he being a licensed law trader is a forensic examiner of evidence and facts. Forensic is the word that was used by even Jeremy Corbyn. While Corbyn was in the post of leader and Starmer was in the post of the Labour Party's kind of spokesperson on Brexit. And not once, more than once, Corbyn publicly praised Keir Starmer about Starmer being a forensic scrutineer, examiner of the crucial evidence, against the fact that Starmer was no such thing. That what Starmer was doing and has been doing and is ever capable of doing is stage a persona, stage a kind of behavior that suggests that he is a forensic examiner of evidence. But in fact, he is a fake. For example, during his appearance in the House of Commons, in his capacity as the shadow Brexit minister, Starmer presented apparently kind of complicated facts as if they were simplified only because of his genius. But in fact, they were an elaborately, forensically, let's say, created series of excuses to conceal the substance of Keir Starmer's failure to challenge and expose, let alone expose, the Brexiteering lies and the lies by the Brexiteers he was supposedly challenging on the House of Commons. And this is the same thing about the police, because Starmer is the kind of shadow leader of the UK Parliament. That is, he is the shadow Prime Minister. But Starmer had not made one single comment about the role of the police, whether the police role has been right or wrong, whether the police wrong has been taken kind of action about. None of the things have or has come from Starmer. And why is that important? Why is that significant? Because Starmer is supposed to know the prosecution, supposed to know more than anybody on the House of Commons now, or supposed to know more than any other MP sitting in the UK House of Commons, the lower house so-called. Because Starmer was in post for 5 years as the director of public prosecutions. That is to say, it was him or his office that decided who got prosecuted or not. The police did the so-called investigation, and then they sent it to him for his approval as the director of public prosecutions, abbreviated to DPP, to give his consent for the go-ahead of a given prosecution. So Starmer is well versed in the process, the bureaucratic process, the various steps that are to be taken before X or Y is prosecuted. And so Starmer should know more than the combined rest of the House of Commons how many kind of evidential, factual, legal grounds existed and still exist for prosecuting Boris Johnson and his cabal for breaking the rules. And yet, on the question, Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, the latest Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, Starmer failed. Starmer failed to corner Boris Johnson with the weight of evidence that exists for his prosecution. We're not talking about him asking for Johnson to resign, but we are asking for a prosecutorial kind of presentation in the kind of forensic way and manner and style for Johnson to be prosecuted. Nothing stopped Starmer from asking that question. Nothing stopped at any of the 6 options that he had. The option to have 6 questions put to Johnson. Nothing stopped Starmer on Wednesday from putting in one of the options, one of the 6 options, he could have put all the facts showing that a comprehensive prosecution of Boris Johnson on multiple counts of criminality existed. He didn't. If he did say that, then that would have been exclusively, amazingly helpful to all the campaigners against Boris Johnson on the breaking of the rules. And what happened was that when Starmer actually put the question, why doesn't he resign, to Johnson, Johnson actually did not challenge that question. Johnson resorted to slippery, and he says that, well, it's Starmer's job to get me out of the job. That was not an answer. And instead of coming back to Johnson on that one, Starmer failed. So we had the question about Starmer. Even if Johnson is ousted, and it's only a matter of time when he is ousted, whoever replaces Johnson will not necessarily put an end to the corrupt, dishonest, anti-democratic agenda that Johnson was fronting. And Starmer has not produced a single evidence, single item. He hasn't produced an evidence of his doing anything to stop the fascistic police bill. And Starmer has not produced a single statement supporting the protest action in Bristol by anyone, including the 4 that have been acquitted, against the felling of the slavers' statue, Coldstone statue. And Starmer, nor his front bench so-called, has produced any rejection, rebuttal of the criticism of the jurors that Johnson himself made, let alone others. The other conservatives have made the predictable criticism, other racist, imperialist conservatives have made the criticism of the acquittal. But Johnson himself has condemned the acquittal. Think about that. Johnson has said that our tradition, he means the racists, slave owners, and slavers' traditions, will survive this kind of acquittal. By which he is meaning that slave ownership and slavery were acceptable, were part of our, that is the British, traditions. And yet Starmer has not condemned him. So we go back to and what else do we find in the, let's say, collection, the combined complete contents of the Financial Times today and the Telegraph, Telegraph. There is no recognition of the world. Although in the news channels, in the last, let's say, 24 hours, there is the recognition of the tsunami and the volcano in the far ocean. For example, I'll check for the updates on the tsunami and the volcano in a minute. So this is one that is posted on YouTube 19 minutes ago. Had a volcano eruption in Tonga prompts tsunami advisory for parts of western Washington. Some coastal towns in Washington saw waves up to 33.5 centimeters Saturday. Let's see what is happening in Seattle. Seattle is where some very important inhabitants are, typified by the two kittens. It's a seaport. So So this is the kind of item or series of items, fact checks that have been broadcast across the USA, western parts of Washington state in the USA about the tsunami hitting Tonga, and then simultaneously with the news that Australia has been updating on extensive warnings about the tsunami and implications. So we move to the treatment by the Rupert Murdoch scum, and we shall go to the Times as well. This is Rupert Murdoch scum of Saturday, the 15th of January 2022, which is it's a front page given to both Boris Johnson and Andrew Windsor. And the paper, this scum is saying that Andrew should apologize to Brenda, that is the monarch, the Queen Elizabeth. This is the scum on Saturday, the 15th of January 2022. This one they're saying that Andrew should apologize, and they're treating Boris Johnson's dishonest apology made through an employee to Brenda as being the same as a genuine directly made apology. Now, this is the one that on pages 4 and 5 of this scum. All of these, I mean, every single 24 hours, the Murdoch-owned scum, mainly the Murdoch-owned scum, issues a new excuse for Boris Johnson. It's not as frequent, but the tendency is the same. It does the same for Andrew Windsor as well. And although the online versions of the event, the so-called news from Bali, have superseded the racist take by the scum and the Daily Mail about the British man killed in Bali. The printed version are still, of course, continuing the lie. that the British man was killed by his Indonesian. They emphasized the Indonesian kind of origin or identity of the woman in Bali. Now they're saying in the latest online versions that he killed himself. But they didn't wait for that. They didn't wait for the evidence before they blamed her. So let's see what the latest take is. So this is posted 3 hours ago by the Daily Mirror website, and 10 hours ago by the Daily Express website, and Evening Standard 11 hours ago, Nokia News 17 hours ago, and the Daily Mail 17 hours ago, and the Daily Mirror 1 day ago, and the Bharat Express News 1 day ago. The Bharat Express News is actually blaming the Indonesian woman, whereas the 3 hours ago by the Daily Mirror website is a Brit man killed in Bali on video call to ex-wife in UK may have committed suicide. And it says hotel boss Matt Harper was chatting online to his stepdaughter and his ex-wife. It seems that this man has had too many marriages and too many families. Hotel boss Matt Harper was chatting online to his stepdaughter and his ex-wife when he was stabbed while in his villa in the holiday island of Bali in Indonesia. A British man who died in Bali while on a video call to his ex-wife at home in the UK may have committed suicide, police have said. That is timed at 15 January 2022. Hotel boss Matt Harper was chatting online to his stepdaughter and his ex-wife when he was stabbed. Police initially detained his Indonesian girlfriend, Emi Pahan, despite her being telling police her boyfriend killed himself. Now, the first thing was that they didn't believe her. That is the presumption of guilt against her. It is said she showed police a video of the 48-year-old from Gloucester dying on the floor of the home on the Indonesian holiday island. She filmed the footage, claiming the man had locked the doors and intentionally harmed himself, which is turning out to be what happened. The woman can be heard saying, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's happened. I don't know. I don't know. But Bali police, proving the death, weren't convinced and soon arrested her on suspicion of murder. Hours before, she updated a bizarre video on social media saying she needed time to come to terms with what had happened. She filmed herself thanking friends and family and said to the camera, naturally, I'm sad. And if you guys don't hear from me, it's not because I don't want to answer. I need time to process things. Please don't believe anything until a statement comes out from the police department. But now Bali's director of criminal investigation, police chief Mr. Surwan, told the Sun, I can't say this is murder yet. So far, we suspect that Mr. Harper died by suicide. He added he has reviewed CCTV footage from Matt's villa, showing him and Emmy on the property on Thursday morning. Mr. Sarawan said it is reported the victim escorted his girlfriend out of the villa. Mr. Harper then entered the villa and went to the bedroom and locked the bedroom door. His girlfriend then came back and peeked into the room and saw that the victim was in a critical condition. She then took the victim to the hospital, but he was not saved. Mr. Harper has wounds to his neck and stomach from a sharp weapon. We are still investigating and interviewing a number of witnesses, including Miss Pakpahan. We also have to wait for the autopsy results to confirm the cause of death. No one has been arrested so far. Now, this is something that should not have been reported in the way that it got reported, but the fact that it got reported immediately by blaming this woman and calling her prominently Indonesian is racist. No other explanation for this. Because, yeah, as may emerge in due course, the fact that he killed himself either during the phone video call with his so-called ex-wife and his stepdaughter may have been the main reason connected with his deciding to kill himself. And that is what the message is from the coverage so far. 2 days later, they say that the police is saying that the man may have killed himself. What happened was that he must have been told something very, very important to him by his stepdaughter and by his ex-wife. So devastated was he that he killed himself, whatever that was. Now here is a rare piece in the Rupert Murdoch Races Come. One is about Gina Miller that we shall read, and the other one is the main one. It's it's a woman called Marcy Muroki. Sounds like an African name. The face is African, and Marcy is Mercy, Marcy Muroki. And this is on page 33 of the Sun of Saturday, 15th of January 2022, and its heading is All Racist Football Trolls Should Pay Penalty by Being Banned for Life. Now, she said the racist troll should be banned for life. Where is the piece about the trolls, the liars that have been lying for Johnson and his racist cabal? Marcy Muroki is a fanatic supporter of the Brexiteers and a supporter of the congenital liar Boris Johnson. Too many criminals being sheltered by the UK Conservative Party are in denial of basic, obvious truth, and they're being given increasingly prominent platforms, which they abuse by repeating the scripts of the racists and colonialists and imperialists. So, Marcy Muroki may be fooling herself. This is a woman called Bagram. So this is a thing called Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. And she is described in the government website of the UK as a social policy researcher, commentator, and columnist. And she holds a BA Honours in Politics from Queen Mary University of London. It's not Queen Mary University of London, you stupid morons. This is Queen Mary College in the University of London, you complete absolute expletives, and is in the process of completing her Masters of Science in Comparative Social Policy at the University of Oxford. She has been recognized for her achievements in academia, including being the recipient of the Professor Lord Smith of Clifton Prize for her work on government and winning one of the Political Studies Association's essay competitions in the Parliament category in 2018. She is a supporter of the she is a supporter of Ian Dracula Duncan Smith. And this is part of the corruption that is engaged by mental slaves to promote Boris Johnson the racist. This is Tony Sewell. This outfit is actually one that is created by and operated for the agenda of Boris Johnson with the mental slave Tony Sewell and Munira Mirza, the Pakistan origin complicit criminal mental slave working with Boris Johnson on his racist anti-Muslim agenda. And the Weekend Financial Crimes has got this House and Home FT Weekend, and it has got a graphic at the center of which is Diana, the image of Diana, and the Sloan Arrangers. "40 years of Sloan Rangers." The Peter York is given a promotion here. Well, that's the graphic featuring Diana. And it's not, it says House and Home, but it is the last thing that they are talking about for the ordinary people. It's not House and Home, it's a promotion of crooks and liars and thieves and racists, of course, exclusion. And the one about life and arts has got a lunch at the FT with Laurie Anderson, Queen of the Avant-Garde. And she's talking against ageism. She's talking with Lucy Callaway. Not Lucy Callaway, that is another piece. This is the one with the. She talks to Anna Nicolau. This FT, lunch with the FT is actually a piece written by Anna Nicolau. And this piece, based on the so-called lunch with the FT, Laurie Anderson, the introduction reads, "She is the avant-garde pioneer who has been challenging our notion of art and music for 4 decades. Over bento boxes and matcha, she talks to Anna Nicolau about life after Lord Reed, the weirdest of New York, and why she's composing for cars and chimps." So who is this Laurie Anderson? Anderson is one of America's pioneers of the avant-garde, a key figure in New York's legendary Warhol era art scene, a creative genius across music, art, and film. Today she is having lunch with me. The rest of the week she is performing a show every night, preparing a Harvard lecture, and then flying to Florida to play a concert with a group of rehabilitated chimpanzees, which she may or may not turn into a record of chimpanzee sounds. I was passing through the Save the Chimps Foundation before the pandemic, and I heard the most amazing music I've ever heard. This amazing rhythm and vocals, she later explains. And it was these chimps screaming and begging. And I was like, ooh. So we are going to bring a bunch of instruments down, bring sounds recordist and engineer. She's excited. I told a friend last night, and she's like, ooh, you just did cars, now you're doing chimps. Because Anderson recently organized a car symphony in the Hamptons, but more of that later. Speaking with Anderson is delightfully strange because her voice is one of our musical instruments, precise and unhurried, at times detached. It was her voice that took her into the mainstream when she accidentally scored a pop music hit with the song Oh Superman in the 1980s, looping her voice with a vocoder. In person, she sounds like Apple Siri but more muffled and with a Midwestern accent. But she speaks so quietly that I strain to hear her from across the table, and I'm anxious that it will later be a struggle to make out her words from my recording. I inch my phone closer to her. Spending time with Anderson is similar to her art, mysterious, unstructured, sometimes hard to understand while it is happening. It can be difficult even to explain who Laurie Anderson is. Promotional materials list her as a multimedia artist. It's easier to define her by what she has done, which is a lot during her 74 years on Earth. Anderson has become the only ever official artist in residence at NASA, made a song about the Iran hostage crisis that became a hit, Oh Superman, written several books, created a dozen albums, and won a Grammy, consulted tech companies, received multiple honorary doctorate degrees, helped to create an Olympic opening ceremony, and turned Moby Dick into a techno opera. The definition of art keeps expanding, but somehow Anderson remains deeply weird and uncategorizable, weaving across film, music, performance art, painting, artificial intelligence, poetry. Now, if if she were in Brick Lane, this Anderson, what would she be doing and what would she be saying? Would she be even worth mentioning? More about that later. So, this piece, going back to the correction, this is not about Laurie Anderson. This is about something else. This is about acceptable to discriminate against older people in the workplace. So, Lucy Callaway on the toxic effects of a puzzling prejudice. So Lucy Callaway, who is aged 62, is the author of this piece against ageism in the financial, if weekend Financial Times. So let's see what the Times of the Saturday, the 15th of January 2022 is saying. And the Times is saying about the Andrew Windsor. This is the piece, two-page spread on the Times of the 15th of January 2022, pages 14 to 15, and it's headed Duke's 2 decades of parties with the gruesome twosome. By the gruesome twosome, he of course is referring to Epstein and Maxwell. Now, there is a recognition, amazingly, in that Times piece of crucial information that has been published by WikiLeaks of Julian Assange, and that actually that set of facts actually refers to the American ambassador to, what is it, Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan? It is Kyrgyzstan. Let's read that paragraph. Andrew noticed nothing untoward. It was also revealed in 2010 in diplomatic dispatches leaked by WikiLeaks that 2 years previously, Andrew was astonishingly candid and verging on the rude during an official engagement. Tatiana Feller, Washington's ambassador to Kyrgyzstan at the time, wrote in the secret cable that Andrew had accused investigators in the Serious Fraud Office of idiocy and complained about Guardian reporters investigating bribery as those expletive journalists who poke their noses everywhere. In 2011, Epstein paid off £15,000 of the £5 million debt run up by Andrew's former wife Sarah. It was an agreement which, after it was revealed, she came to regret. I personally, on behalf of myself, deeply regret that Jeffrey Epstein became involved in any way with me, she told the London Evening Standard in March 2011. I abhor pedophilia and any sexual abuse of children, and know that this was a gigantic error of judgment on my behalf. Whenever I can, and I will repay the money, and will have nothing ever to do with Jeffrey Epstein ever again. It was the fallout from the scandals, reading again, it was the fallout from this scandal that led in July 2011 to the end of Andrew's role as a UK trade envoy, which earned him the nickname Air Miles Andy. However, he continued to carry out public duties. In 2012, he raised nearly £300,000 for charity by abseiling down the Shard. But that same year, the Yorks were excluded from the Buckingham Palace balcony at the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations. The Prince of Wales, it was said, favored a slimmed down monarchy. And then in 2015, things began to marvel. I'll read that again. And then in 2015, things began to unravel. Andrew was named in US court papers as part of a civil case against Epstein. He was not party to the proceedings but was identified as part of the evidence by Gaffrey, who said that she had been ordered to give him whatever he required. Separately, Sobark's allegation that Prince Andrew touched her breasts was contained in a defamation case brought by Jeffrey against Maxwell. The allegations did not come to light until 2019 when the documents were released by a judge. In the meantime, Andrew battled on. In an interview with the Sunday Times magazine in 2017, Andrew told John Arledge that he thought of himself as an ideas factory. Citing his pitch, Palace venture, and a digital enterprise award, he was useful to the family, he argued, because he was modernizing the farm by upgrading the technology available in its palaces. We are going to upgrade the Wi Fi capability over the next couple of months, he added. The article noted that US court papers alleged he tried to seek special legal favors for Jeffrey Epstein, an American businessman and personal friend, when Epstein was charged with soliciting a minor for prostitution, a claim denied by Buckingham Palace. After Epstein was convicted and placed on America's sex offenders register, HRH continued to meet him. In the summer of 2017, he was criticized for hosting a private birthday party for David Beckham, David Beckham's daughter at Buckingham Palace. Would it not have been better, some wondered, to have hosted the survivors of the Grenfell Tower? So this is the Times that concludes this two-page spread. That confidence was misplaced. Well, a source familiar with the Duke's legal team told the Daily Mail there is a great deal of confidence among everyone, Andrew included, that the civil suit will be thrown out before it ever comes to court. The next paragraph in the Times, that confidence was misplaced. According to lawyers, Andrew now has no good options left. He can try to settle the case, which requires Virginia Roberts' agreement, or defend it. The former, that is, the settling of the case, will tarnish what little remains of his reputation forever. The latter risks a sensational trial from which the royal family has now tried to distance itself. I emphasize the word tried to distance itself by saying that he would fight this case as a private citizen. The last paragraph, whichever course he chooses in this, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee year, the story of the prince, the procuress, and the pedophile will not have a fairy tale ending. That's what it says. And there is more. We shall come to the more in a minute. And about the lying Boris Johnson, 70% of the people polled say Johnson did not tell the truth about scandal. And there are two more pages on the Downing Street drinks parties. Boozy culture where number 10 staff slept off, hangovers on sofas. And there is an item by Dominic Kennedy. There is a woman called Tahra Ahmed who has been convicted of anti Semitic posts in 2017, shortly after the Grenfell Tower massacres. Now, there are two pages about Andrew again on pages 12 and 13 of the Times, featuring the three women, Fagi and his two daughters. And this is the heading: Grand Inquisitor wants to grill Andrew's family on pizza alibi. And another one is Queen won't risk bailing son out, say royal experts. And there is a piece that says that Andrew may be questioned about his private parts. This is very undignified and disgraceful, all of it. And this one about Valentine, the Grand Inquisitor, wants to. The Grand Inquisitor is in the USA. So let's have a kind of brief look at it. The Duke of York is expected to learn in the coming days whether his daughters and former wife will face questioning from Virginia Jeffrey's lawyers. Prince Andrew's legal team will discover, possibly as early as today, which members of his family will be asked to give evidence under oath, a US legal process known as deposition. David Boyce, Virginia Jeffrey's Virginia Jeffrey's lawyers, who has been nicknamed the Grand Inquisitor because of his skill at interviewing witnesses under oath, has already suggested that he could question Sarah, the Duchess of York, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie. They will likely be questioned about Andrew's alibi for the night in 2001 that Jeffrey says she first had sex with him in Ghislaine Maxwell's London home. In his BBC Newsnight interview in 2019, Andrew, 61, said that he was with the children that day because he remembered taking Beatrice to a party at the Pizza Express in Woking, Surrey. A move to depose senior members of the royal family would heap more misery on the man, ninth in line to the throne, who on Thursday was stripped of his military rule, titles, and patronages in a face to face meeting with the Queen. In a further humiliation, it was also decided that Andrew, who is said to be the Queen's favorite son, would stop using the style of His Royal Highness in any official capacity. Jeffrey, 38, formerly Virginia Roberts, is suing Andrew in the US for allegedly sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager and claims that she was trafficked by the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with the Duke when she was 17. Allegations Andrew denies. Boyce has said Jeffrey is determined to take the case to a trial before a jury in New York this autumn, with depositions possibly taken this summer. Andrew could avoid being interviewed under oath by simply ignoring the deposition request. However, this risks the judge ruling against him in his absence because branding him a sex abuser and ordering him to pay compensation. Andrew could also avoid a trial by striking an out of court settlement with Jeffrey, likely to be worth millions of pounds. However, even if she were willing to settle, Andrew's legal team have made clear that he intends to fight the claims. It leaves the prince with mounting questions over how to fund an estimated legal bill of about 5 million and 6 million to contest the case. Because he's now a private citizen, he's also facing having to pay for his own security. Damian Hinds, the security minister, did not confirm when asked yesterday whether taxpayers would continue to fund the Duke's protection. Buckingham Palace said that this was a matter for the Metropolitan Police. So there are endless, endless items about him, because there are double page spreads, and the role the media are playing, the Fleet Street is playing, is still very sympathetic. It is saying that, like in that piece that I've just read from the Times, as to how legal costs of £5 to £6 million is a burden for him. Think about what David Neuberger said in July 2017 in a propaganda piece published in the evening Standard as a news, based on David Neuberger's meeting with a small group of Australians talking about Brexit and the impact that having a Brexit or Brexited UK would have on the potential of the London-based court system, court bureaucracy. David Neuberger said that it would open up the potential for London to become the center of the world's legal dispute resolutions. And in that piece, as reported on the 4th of July 2017 by Martin Bentham, the so-called home editor at the time, Neuberger said that when the post-Brexit, what he said, I'm paraphrasing, post-Brexit, he didn't use the kind of complex word post-Brexit. What he said was, when our judges, when was the reference to post-Brexit, when our, that is English judges, get hold of or return or start reusing our common law devices. The forward phrase, our common law devices, belongs to David Neuberger. That's what was quoted by Martin Bentham in his piece on the evening Standard. Now, when David Neuberger said our common law devices or our judges get back to using the common law devices, he was boastfully kind of boosting the propaganda of the Brexiteers. Let's see what he said. Now, the actual headline on the Evening Standard online piece reads, Brexit could boost London's status as world's legal center, Britain's top judge says. And it says, the country's most senior judge has declared that Brexit could boost London's status as the world's legal center by allowing the courts to respond more swiftly to emerging worldwide issues. Lord Neuberger, the president of the Supreme Court, that was the time when Neuberger was in the process of retiring, said that once British judges were left to our own common law devices, these are the words that are quoted, left to our common law devices, they would be able to react more quickly and freely to developments in our fast changing world. Now, there is no way, there is absolutely no way that that can happen, or that boast is true, because the procedure of legal disputes or legal kind of litigation in the London courts, that is the High Court, etc., Queen's Bench Division and other divisions, is very lengthy, very time consuming. And there is no evidence that ordinary people from either Britain or from outside of the UK or Britain would be allowed within 100 years of the kind of permitted space of the so-called London courts, because the access to the London courts and their so-called kind of role that David Neuberger was boasting, the access is dependent on lots and lots of money being available to the litigants. So Neuberger was lying, as was Martin Bentham, as was David Lidington. Lidington was the minister for so-called justice, the post in which the lawyer Dominic Raab is installed at this time. That is today, Sunday, the kind of 16th of January 2022, when we are broadcasting this one. This is marked as part A of the Kudila television channel, timed at 23:55 hours GMT on Saturday, 15th of January 2022, but it's crossed into Sunday. And we are into Sunday, and after Sunday, 3 a.m. in the morning of Sunday, the 16th of January 2022. This is 0306. So what we shall be doing, we could go on, but because of the technical issues and the length of the video, we shall stop it here at 0306 or 0307 hours GMT, London, UK, within quotation marks. And the British Standard Time is 7 minutes past 3 in the morning of Sunday, the 16th of January 2022. We shall continue, permit, of course, the IT issues needs to be under review for the next few editions.